Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Bengus Khan, and today I have for you my full Cosmere tier list. This is the first time I have ever been fully caught up on all of the published Cosmere works, and we might be waiting a little while to get any more, maybe Stormlight novellas, and definitely the 5th Stormlight book at the end of next year. So this is the fullest Cosmere tier list one can have at this point, and I'm definitely a mega fan of Sanderson and the Cosmere, but I really enjoy reading all sorts of other authors and series in between all these Cosmere books, so I've only read a lot of the Mistborn and Stormlight ones twice, all the other ones just once. It's fun just seeing how everyone else ranks them because there's so many, there's going to be so many disagreements and differences of opinion, and that's okay. Tell me what you would do very differently on here when you get to the end. Alright, so first I've put this in rough publication order, and Elantris was his first ever pub novel, and that one is a solid B-tier book for me. It wasn't the most compelling book, but I did grow attached to the main characters, enjoyed the setting and the main plot. I just think he locked himself into that rigid, rotating POV structure, and that kind of disrupted the flow of that book, and I think there was a better book lurking in there somewhere, but I am curious. It worked really well as a standalone. Curious where those sequels might be going soon, so we shall see. And then The Hope of Elantris, which is a short story from that setting, and as with a lot of the general trend here, I think Sanderson just shines in the epic scope, longer types of books, and the shorter we get, I think the less impactful for me. And this one, I just barely even remember it. I read it in the Arcanum collection. I remember thinking it was okay, but don't remember much else about it. Alright, now Mistborn, The Final Empire. This is the book that brought me into adult fantasy and captivated me in a way that I hadn't felt reading since I was a kid, much younger. It's going right into S tier. I loved the setting, the scrappy group of characters, the extremely suspenseful plot, getting to know the magic system. It became a pretty emotional read for me as well. So I just adore that first Mistborn book, and I reread it again and loved it the second time. Amazing reread experience because you know so many reveals that contribute to seeing new things. But I look forward to just making this more of a comfort, cozy read in the future. The Well of Ascension, a solid middle book of that first trilogy. I enjoy the kind of siege plot and action scenes. Probably a little bit weaker for me than the first book was, so I'll put it in A. And then The Hero of Ages. I love a good Sanderlanche. This whole book kind of feels like a Sanderlanche for that trilogy. Just so many impactful climactic moments, reveals, emotional character beats. I love this book dearly, one of my favorite books, and so it's going to the top of S tier right now. And then Warbreaker. So, and after going through Mistborn, it's interesting to go to a new setting for a different kind of standalone like Elantris, but this one worked a little better for me than Elantris. I was really compelled by the magic system and the different kind of character groups and the plot, very suspenseful and high stakes. I really like Warbreaker. I think that's gonna go behind Well of Ascension, yeah. And The Way of Kings, the start of my current favorite series. Just a fantastic slow burn of a start. That's going up into S tier. I think on its own, probably a little bit less captivating than The Final Empire was, but I loved this whole book one, and yeah, it has its own really emotional moments, but just solid foundation on which the rest of the incredible series is built. The 11th Metal Mistborn short story. I kind of remember this and thinking it was just okay and kind of unnecessary and not needed. I'm going to put it below The Hope of Elantris in C. The Alloy of Law. Alright, after all of these very heavy epic fantasy tomes, to get something that was faster paced, just overall lighter, a little bit of a swashbuckling feel. Loved the mix of the magic systems going on. and even Wayne's humor was always amusing to me in this one. So I had a great time with this. I think that's going to go up into A, maybe right behind Warbreaker. The Emperor's Soul. This is an interesting one, because if I had just read it once, going off that, this one might be high A tier, but a couple years ago I just decided on impulse to give it a reread, since it kind of short and quick as a kind of long novella, and it just didn't work nearly as well for me on second read. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's really interesting, but maybe just being familiar with where it was going hurt me on that reread. I think I'm going to put it underneath Elantris. And then Shadows for Silence and the Forests of Hell. This is kind of a short novella, long short story. And this was, I remember being engaged and interested, but once again, pretty short. Didn't really grow attached to any of the characters. The horror kind of genre of this, I think, didn't really appeal to me that much, but I think there was more substance there than these other short stories, so go to the top of C. That is not the case with Words of Radiance, a 1,000-page tome with so much substance, it's hard to fathom. This might be one of my single favorite books of all time, and that's going to the top of S tier. This just built on what The Way of Kings had done and took us to lofty, inspiring, transcendent places, and some of the most stand up and cheer or just emotional moments that I've ever experienced as a reader. It's memorable. Yeah, easy to put that at the top right now. And then Sixth of the Dusk. So out of the kind of curios, the random short stories and novellas, this might be my favorite. And I enjoyed the plotting and the setting, the situation with the birds. I forget what they're called, but that was cool. It was a very suspenseful, tense kind of book, and I liked that. So I'll put it above Emperor's Soul. Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Eltania. Oh man, I do not really like the Allomancer Jack vignettes that we get in the Mistborn Era 2 books. It's kind of just playing up this kind of pulpy adventure kind of storytelling, and it's an in-world kind of thing, and so many things were set up for me not to really want to enjoy Allomancer Jack, but a whole story just around him, man, I could have done without that. Yeah, I guess if people like that character and the storytelling, that could work a lot better, but yeah, I could have done probably without all of these short stories. And then Shadows of Self, Mistborn Era 2, Book 2, but this was really the start of a new trilogy. He looked at the Alloy of Law as more like a standalone, and then starting this new trilogy, and it's maybe my least favorite of the Cosmere novels. On first read, I think I was really into it, but the very particular plot of this one I don't love, and I reread it I think twice, once more in the lead up to the Lost Metal, and a lot of it takes place over the course of one night, and this particular plot and series of events, just something that I'm not in love with, but solid, still a solid book overall, and definitely sets a lot of things up that are important. Speaking of setup, that gets paid off in the Bands of Mourning. This felt like a climactic book in a lot of ways, and we were then sitting on it for years waiting for the next book to come out, but it had such a great kind of ending sequence that it's up there with some of my favorites. I'll think I might put it right, maybe above Well of Ascension? Yeah, possibly. I really do love this book. So, go for the top of A for Bands of Mourning. There are certain side characters that become more front and center. Steris just becomes a complete delight in this book. And once again, just an absolutely fantastic climactic sequence. Mistborn Secret History. So I love getting the behind the curtain peek at what's going on during that first Mistborn trilogy from an kind of omniscient or outside perspective. I just ate this up. I reread it, enjoyed it again on second read. Man, for one of the kind of novellas of the Cosmere. It's one of my favorites, so maybe I'll put that beneath the Alloy of Law. Yeah, A tier for Secret History. Give me more of that behind the scenes stuff. I loved it. Edge Dancer, a Stormlight novella. Not as in love with that, but I'm not a Lift hater. I do enjoy being with Lift a lot of the time, and I just didn't think this particular plot was too memorable. It didn't have too much of an impact. I probably could have done without this novella, to be honest. And I might put it just above Sixth of the Dusk, yeah. And then Oathbringer. Okay, Oathbringer, one of the most divisive of all the Cosmere works. Where am I going to put Oathbringer? If you had S tier above Mistborn, then you'd be correct. So, I am not one of the many Oathbringer detractors. Every complaint that people generally have with it, I see as valid, but that was just not my experience of it. The focus on the particular character at the center of this with the flashbacks is one of my favorite characters in all of literature, and really just love all of those flashbacks and what we learned about that character through those, and then building up to, again, just an outstanding, stellar, climactic sequence that had so much tension built into it, and such great payoffs, and some of the most impactful singular kind of moments that I've experienced in any book, and the long kind of side questy diversion in the middle that a lot of people complain about. I also love that. I was happy spending as much time as we did there. It was all fascinating. Yeah, love Oathbringer, and yeah, totally understand if that one is lower on other people's rankings. Dawnshard. Okay, now I enjoyed this. I really liked the two main character POVs that we are following, and it's setting up some really important things for the Cosmere overall, but it wasn't the most engaging time. I think I'll put that just above Edge Dancer, because I did like it more than that one. Rhythm of War. So a lot of people, again, I think are falling off in their Stormlight or Cosmere mega fandom in recent years, as the books are getting more Cosmere-y, indulging Sanderson with the magic systems, and people don't necessarily have the most patience for that, but once again, I ate it up. I devoured Rhythm of War, loved it to death, can't wait to reread it in the lead up to Stormlight 5. The question is just how high it's going to go, and I think, see, Mistborn for a book one is doing, and Way of Kings are amazing book ones, but I'm already so invested in these characters and this plot and setting that it's hard for these books not to feel more impactful for me than a book one like Final Empire. So I think I'll put Rhythm of War right behind Oathbringer. Very, very similar types of reading experiences for me between really all the Stormlight books. So yeah, not a surprise. This is one of my, if not, well, the favorite fantasy series I have going. I just read through the omnibus graphic novel of White Sand, and I know that the original volumes had been published earlier, but the omnibus was just published recently. That's why I put it here, and it's the only one that's going in that no tier. No. Just no. Dragonsteel, why? Why did we agree to Dynamite Entertainment's request to turn your unpublished early story into a graphic novel? It is, I guess I understand the impulse to want to just get the story out there and do something different, but this might have been the worst reading experience of my entire life. I just finished this a couple days ago, and I can't believe that Dragonsteel produced this, or was part of this, or allowed this to go forward, because the story was so boring and unimpactful. All of the characters so unlikable and unengaging. The setup was just not there to get me to care about the setting, the plot, the characters. Just the things that Sanderson's usually so good at doing were not there. And the dialogue, since it's a graphic novel, most of what we have are just kind of the visuals of action and dialogue. Dialogue felt so juvenile, and the action was just not very compelling, a little hard to follow. And overall, I just wish this didn't exist, because I know Sanderson's working on a revised prose version, and I'll probably eventually read that, and now it's completely tainted by all these negative associations I have with this story. And now even the previously intriguing character of Chris, who's a big character in this, is now kind of ruined for me. Man, this was just a horror show for me. Every moment was painful, and I would not recommend anyone try the White Sand graphic novel. If you're interested, wait for the revised prose version. Man, this was a disaster, and really the only Cosmere work that I think was a waste of my time. A complete and utter waste of my time. So, yeah, easy one to go in that bottom tier all by itself. Alright, but let's move on to greener pastures with The Lost Metal, the very highly anticipated finale to that series I'd been waiting for a few years, and it delivered for me. I so enjoyed the ending to that series, and I'll probably put it right above The Bands of Mourning. It was very action heavy, but in a really interesting way, with lots of different kind of magics all interacting with each other, and the emotional payoffs at the end were really there for me. And that's when I know that that book spoke to something deep and is going to stay with me and be something memorable going forward. And now to the secret projects. So I didn't put this tier list together. Someone had done this a while back, just when the prototype covers were released. So that's why it doesn't say Tress on here. But Secret Project 1 is Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I just was delighted by Tress. I had no complaints. As a standalone, it works so well. A kind of very creative, magical read where the setting felt so fresh and new. The lighter kind of fairy tale storytelling just really hit for me. Loved the characters. The side characters were really fleshed out and played meaningful roles. So, man, this is tough. Comparing it to The Lost Metal, the finale of a series, but I think I'll put Tress just above The Lost Metal. And Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. As much as I loved Tress, I liked Yumi even more. It had such an impact for me as a standalone that I have to throw it up into S tier. And I think I do just on its own like it more than The Way of Kings. And probably, yeah, I'll put it right below The Final Empire. But the dual settings and the particular plot that the main characters have to go through together was so compelling. I loved Yumi from the bottom of my heart. So easy S tier one there. And then The Sunlit Man. It was a great, fun, tense ride. Maybe not as impactful as Tress or Yumi, but I did really enjoy it. I think it might go above The Bands of Mourning. Yeah, I'll put it in the high A tier. Well of Ascension is tough. I'll throw it towards the top of A tier. So these Secret Project Cosmere books were a huge hit. And I just hope Sanderson continues to work in kind of interesting standalones here and there, because to get a new setting, a new magic system to discover, it's always a delight with the Cosmere. So that's it. That's my tier list. Let me know what you think, where you have agreements, disagreements, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So I'll catch you later.